Let's get started?
Yeah, so now we can start.
Yes. First things first, right? So welcome everybody to this presentation, How to Live in a Post-Spring Cloud Netflix World.
Thanks for coming.
Thanks for coming. We love your enthusiasm. You can see that you're plenty of energy. That's the most important thing. So
there was a party yesterday.
Oh yeah. We were at the party actually. So we have quite a few things to talk about. So let's just waste some time, right? Let's waste some time on talking about ourselves. So maybe.
Okay. My name is Olga Maciaszek Sharma. You can find my Twitter handle here if it's easier than the full name. And I work in the Spring Cloud team. I mostly work on Spring Cloud Contract, but I also do changes and work on Gateway, Netflix, OpenFane. Yeah.
So my name is Marcin Grzejszczak, and I'm working at the Spring Cloud team, leading the Sloof and Contract projects. Also, I'm very fond of CI/CD topics. My Twitter handle is @mgrzejszczak, and you can find my blog at toomuchcoding.com. So, a little bit of history, I guess. So let's go back in time, in let's say some 5 years or so. So back in the days. Oh, it sounds terrible, like back in the days.
Yeah, we are that old.
Yeah, I remember that 5 years ago, we were at the time, of course, none of you were at this position, but we had the problem with writing monoliths. We're terrible at it, absolutely bad. They didn't work. So, for some reason, someone came to the conclusion that we can't write good monoliths, so let's write distributed systems. Right?
We went to many conferences, and there they told us that what you need to do now is write distributed systems.
And it makes perfect sense, right? You can't write a single application with one transaction distributed. Okay, so we went to this conference, and we say, that's brilliant. That sounds like a great idea. So there are plenty of people doing presentations on how to do microservices, right? So we were listening to those, and we thought, okay, let's go back to our company, because with Olga, 5 years ago, we worked together in the same company, and we started to think like, okay, we have a monolithic application there as well. So, what kind of a problem would microservices solve for us? So we were thinking that, in general, we do have a problem that the microservices could solve, which is the problem of scaling the app, but not in terms of the instance, but having a lot of people working on a single code base.
And also the problem of not being hip enough.
Oh, yeah, because you have to do microservices, then you can hire people, right? So we came to the conclusion that we can't have more people, because we had over 100 people working on a single code base back then. And we talked to the business that, we have problems. We can't actually, deliver as many features as you would like us to do because we have too many people working on the code base. So what's the absolutely greatest idea to solve this problem by the business? Obviously, adding more people, right? So we had 120 people at some time, and the velocity was even slower. So we came to the conclusion that if we try to split this into microservices in some way, maybe we will at least be able to recruit more people, but maybe we'll be able to increase the velocity, or at least something that doesn't belong to the bounded context. Bounded context for a monolith sounds funny, if assuming that we talk about the monolith we had. So whatever shouldn't be there in the monolith, maybe we'll write it as a separate deployable unit. So we sat down and said, okay, let's consider that, and maybe it's time to actually take a look at the tools that are out there. We went to different conferences, we read articles, we read books, and it turned out that the de facto standard for doing microservices are the Netflix tools.
A slightly bigger company than us.
Yeah, by a couple of 100,000 requests per second. So we came to the conclusion that, okay, let's check what those are. We did an analysis, and we came to the conclusion that it's actually not very easy to configure them even, right? We had a Spring application, and...
Or integrated.
Yeah, so integration with Netflix tools weren't that easy. So we thought that, let's try to abstract it, right? Let's hide all the details in some nice abstraction so that the developers will not have to actually, play with configuration of different tools within the Netflix portfolio. So we took a look at what's there in the OSS market, and we found Spring Cloud, which was in snapshots back then. Of course, with Olga, we've always done YOLO-driven development, and we could have taken the snapshots of a library, but we are a little bit scared. So we sat down, and we had this great, absolutely brilliant idea that all of us have at a certain point. Let's build something of our own.
Two great ideas in the same month.
Absolutely. So we did do that. We built something of our own, but actually that made sense because we needed a different release cadence, and we wanted those abstractions to be specific for our use cases, right? So we did create such a tool. We abstracted all sorts of things inside, but time passed, and Spring Cloud, much to our surprise, caught us, right, and overtaken us in terms of the features and the quality, especially the quality. And then we decided that, okay, so since we are already experienced developers, we know that the best solution to any problem is to push this problem to somebody else, right?
Delegating.
Delegation is the key. So we said, okay, so no longer do we want to support our tools, let's push them to Spring Cloud. So that's what we did. And a lot of stuff that is in Spring Cloud was in Spring Cloud back then, at least in some projects, were contributed by us, because we wanted to delegate this problem to somebody else. The problem was that due to the fact that we did it, we got hired by Pivotal. So we delegated to the Spring Cloud team. So we delegated our own problems to ourselves. So I guess we're bad at delegation.
The joke is on us.
Yeah. Anyways, from then we started using Spring Cloud because it allowed us to have very, very, very nice abstractions over various things, which are those, for example, from the Netflix portfolio. That's why we had the Spring Cloud Netflix project heavily used in our project. So what are those tools? So we have Spring Cloud Netflix Eureka. So who has heard of Eureka? Okay. Well, that's a lot of people. So I'm not going to ask if you heard about service discovery, because essentially Eureka is an implementation of a service discovery tool. For those who don't know, because there were like two hands, service discovery is a mechanism that within the cloud architecture, you no longer hard code the IP and port, but you ask an app, a service like Eureka, can you give me this, right? Because you can have multiple instances of an app deployed in the cloud. So that's Eureka. We have Archaeus. Who has heard of Archaeus? Who's using Archaeus? That's interesting. Okay, there are some people. So
a lot of you are using it as a transitive dependency.
Yeah, so maybe I should have asked who's using it by desire, so to say. So Archaeus, it's a tool used for dynamic configuration, like essentially. Ribbon. I remember like 5 years ago when I first saw Ribbon and I heard that it's a client-side load balancer, I thought that it makes absolutely no sense. Like, why would you use it? If you can have a load balancer, but why would you have a client-side load balancer? But actually, it makes a lot of sense, because if you communicate with various apps, you can have different, you can tweak the way you treat load balancing for that particular app. Another thing which is very interesting is what happens if you don't have a client-side load balancer that caches the addresses of different apps in case where the service discovery system goes down. Right? If it goes down, you can ask for IPs and ports, and you have a problem. But if you cache, you can have a snapshot of the world. Of course, it can be outdated, but at least you have something, right? So that's Ribbon. Zuul. Who's using Zuul? That's nice. So Zuul, for those who don't use it, it's a proxy, essentially. Hystrix. Who's using Hystrix? Okay, that's a lot of people. So Hystrix is an implementation of circuit breaker. So essentially, we don't want to propagate cascade failure. If one app is calling another, for example, and the other app is malfunctioning, at some point when some statistics will, let's say, define it, we assume that the other app is like, we shouldn't call it because it's going to fail anyway, so we can short circuit the calls. We can say either immediately throw an exception or return a fixed response, right? Hystrix dashboard. So this is a UI to visualize the state of our systems in terms of the circuit breakers. Turbine. If you have a lot of apps that have circuit breakers, you can aggregate them, right? And this Turbine is an aggregator. So the last two apps are actually purely Spring Cloud apps that allow you to gather data from Hystrix and Turbine via messaging via Spring Cloud Stream. right? So these were the abstractions that Spring Cloud has created, and we continue to use them in our previous job, and now we're developing them in Spring Cloud. So, you know, time flied, everybody was happy, because, you know, Netflix, it's a big company, right? And they develop great software.
Everybody uses them.
Everybody uses them. What can change?
Most of you are using it.
Apparently, you could have seen how many users were using that. And then 2016 comes, and suddenly, it turns out that Ribbon is going into maintenance mode, which means, for Netflix, we're not doing anything with the project, except for the fact that if we as Netflix need something from the project, we're going to do it. But no issues will be fixed. We're not touching the project if we don't have to. Which is kind of sad, right? Because a lot of people are using Ribbon. It's 2016, right? So that's a lot of time already. There are companies that build something on top of Hystrix dashboard, right? To visualize some stuff better. Suddenly, the project is going into maintenance. You have to start using Project Atlas, which is completely backward incompatible with Hystrix dashboard, like zero. Zool 1, you're using Zool. You created some different routes, customizations. Zool 2 comes in, completely backwards incompatible. You can't directly migrate. You have to write some stuff from scratch. Arcais 1, Arcais 2, the same thing. And then the bomb, Hystrix 2018, not maintained anymore, right? So
they also decided to delegate.
Exactly. So what Olga says is right, because most likely, it's just an assumption, it might have something to do with the fact that Netflix has decided to go fully with Spring Boot and Spring Cloud. And yesterday, Adrian Cole was giving a presentation about distributed tracing. So I was really happy, like I was smiling, because I saw that the tool that we're developing, Spring Cloud Sleuth, is heavily used by Netflix, which means that Netflix learned from us and decided to delegate their problems to us, right? So that makes sense.
Took them some time.
Yeah. So we also decided not to be worse than Netflix, and we said, we're going to go with maintenance mode as well. So with Greenwich RC1, we decided to go to maintenance mode. But it's a little bit different, our maintenance mode, to theirs, because we say that, okay, here we agree with Netflix, no new features. We're not adding any new features. But if there are blockers, or if there are security problems, we will fix those, right? We will do it. We also love our community, so we can have a discussion, and another one, and 10 more iterations. And then, if there's a small pull request, we'll review it and merge it, right? So it's a little bit different. So if you check this out, all the gray projects are going into maintenance mode, right? So everything except for Eureka is going into maintenance mode.
They are already in maintenance.
Yes, it's already in maintenance mode since Greenwich RC1, and we have already Greenwich service release 1, so it was some time ago. But Eureka is still evolved, so it's not going into maintenance mode at all right now. So right now we're going to show you, I'm going to show you the old stack, Spring Cloud Netflix, how you could leverage that. So we need a demo, so we need some sort of a business domain. So we're at a conference, so it has to be either a beer or financial domain.
Yeah.
So let's go with the financial domain.
Financial.
Okay, let's do it. So we're going to have a user that registers for a credit card. So we're going to have a card service. Some processing goes on. So we have to create a new user, and we're going to call a proxy, or via the proxy, we'll call the user service in order to create a new user. And also, there has to be a fraud verifier, always. Even if you buy a beer.
In every hour demo, yeah.
So there's going to be also verification if there's a fraud. So the stack that we're going to use is, we're going to use, in the card application service, we're going to use Ribbon. As a proxy, we're going to use Zool. And we're going to have Hystrix and Hystrix dashboard there. We're going to find all the applications using Eureka, right?
So that's probably, the starting stack is probably the one many of you have right now.
Absolutely. You might be interested in the ignored service. All of us have this ignored service, right? Typically, it's a service on production that we have no code source for, but it's running and nobody wants to kill it, right? So this is one of the apps. And the thing is that we want to show you the difference between Zuul and the gateway. And with Zuul, everything is whitelisted. So if we want to blacklist an app, we have to, let's say, explicitly do it. So a blacklisted app is an ignored service.
Yeah.
So that's why we called it an ignored service. It makes sense, right? And there's going to be also Turbine application, and we're going to show you that. So let's go to the code. We're in the proper place. Let's go from the very, very beginning. So we have a user service. Let's check out the user service. So what do we have here? We have the mouse in the other direction. So we have user service application. We are enabling Hystrix and Hystrix dashboard because we can. So a request comes in, and we delegate the work to user registration service, whatever that is. So now let's check out the user registration service. Again, we are very good at delegation. So we delegate from user registration service to verification service client. And now let's check this out. So the first thing we can see here is, well, actually I should start with the card service, sorry. Let's go with the card service. This is the last application. Let's start with the first. So you have the card service application, sorry. So let's start with the user service client. And here we are injecting a REST template. So one of the most frequent questions we had is if we are using Spring Cloud and we have a REST template, one of which is an ordinary REST template, and the other one is supposed to be used in the load balancer way, right? So we need to find an application in service registry. How can we do it? You can't even imagine how many times have we heard this question. So if you have this question, we're going to answer it right now. You have to use a qualifier. So if we go to the configuration of our application, we'll see that we have two REST template beans. One is load balanced, which means that if we call a host with a given name, that name is going to be a service ID in Eureka. And the other one is an ordinary REST template, and you have the qualifiers that differentiate the two. Whoops.
Here we'll use the ribbon load balancer underneath.
Correct. And here you can see the ribbon load balancer definition or customization, so to say. How does it work? I'm going to show you in a second. So let's go to the user service client. So we inject the REST template with the qualifying REST template, which is the ordinary one. And here we have a very nice abstraction called Discovery Client coming from Spring Cloud. So what we do here is we are searching for a service ID called proxy, and we're retrieving the instances, all the instances of those of this particular service. So if we go to the Eureka server, we'll see that we have quite a few apps running here.
Mouse.
I don't need the mouse. I have my 2 fingers here. So here we have quite a few apps registered. So card service, fraud verifier, ignored, and the proxy, right? So if we in the code say get instances of proxy, we will retrieve those instances. If there are none, we're going to throw an exception. So then what we're doing is we're calling the proxy with the user service registration path, which means we're saying, dear Zuul, please find user service and redirect the call to user services registration endpoint. So that's how you can do it with a standard REST template. Now if we go to the verification service client, you will see that we're doing a load balanced REST template. And here we're calling the fraud verifier hostname. Of course, there is no such a hostname, but since we're using ribbon underneath, the hostname will be converted into a service ID. And things will happen because, as Olga mentioned in the configuration, we have ribbon client, and here we say there's a custom ribbon configuration. So you annotate your class with ribbon client, and you provide a custom ribbon configuration. Here you can define that for this particular client, so if we're calling fraud detection, the rule, the load balancer rule should be the round robin rule. And you could create your own rules, etc., etc., right? So this is how you tell ribbon how to behave in a custom way. So that was the card service. Now let's go to the proxy. So the proxy has a single annotation in terms of Zuul, which is enable Zuul proxy. You can see here. And the whole configuration is there in the resources. So we have Zuul we say, like I said, everything is whitelisted. So we say ignored services are those for example, the ignored service, so the one with service ID ignored. But if you want to allow, like whitelist just a certain path, you have to ignore it completely and whitelist a given path. For example, test allowed. If you call any other path in the ignored service, it's not going to be
You can
routed.
configure around 6 more things in Zool.
Yeah, so that's Zool. And last but not least, let's go back to the user service. And let's go over here. So again, like I mentioned, we have a controller that delegates to a service, that delegates to another service, and let's focus on that one. We have a REST template and discovery client, and here we can see the Hystrix command, right? So we have a method called verify new user. We wrap it with a Hystrix command, which means that the result of execution of this method will be measured, right? And if within certain period of time we have X number of exceptions, Hystrix will assume that the other app is faulty and will not, at certain point, call the other application. It will throw an exception. In this case, we have a fallback method, which means that if there is a problem, we will have the user rejected method executed, which will assume that all of the users are frauds, right? So that's pretty much it. Let's check out what we have here. We're gonna send some requests. So we're sending a lot of requests. Let's go to the to our application, and
We are using AB, which is a nice benchmarking tool.
yeah. So we're sending all sorts of applications, requests. And here we can see Hystrix dashboard, which shows us the state of our commands in the system. Hopefully you can see that this green circle is quite big because there's a gigantic load, which should be getting down because we stopped doing any calls. Circuits are closed, which means that everything is fine. There are no red digits anywhere, which means that there are no exceptions. And here you can see the verify new user, which means that this is the command that we wrapped in execution of our method. So this is pretty much it in terms of the old stack, Olga. So maybe you will tell us how to migrate.
That's the world we lived in.
Yeah, can you tell us how to
recently.
migrate to the new thing?
Yeah.
There you go.
So, let me move it.
I will move to the right.
Okay. So that was just the old stack. And now let's see what can we do right now to stop working on the stack that is already under maintenance. So the first thing is the load balancer. So first things first, let me just kill all these apps that are currently running.
So has anybody been using the old stack in a similar way? Okay, good. So actually, even though we just code the tools, we still know how to use it properly, right? Which is quite good.
Yeah. And let's just run the new stack. So we are going to have the same functionality exactly in the same apps, but what we are not going to do is we are going to try and avoid the maintenance mode projects. So let's go here. Okay, sorry. Okay, let's start with our verification client. So we had a load balanced REST template here, and if we go to the configuration part, we will see that there were some changes. So let's see the config. As you can see here, not a lot has changed. Let me close this for now. So the real only thing that has changed in the code is this annotation. So we had ribbon client, now we'll have load balancer client, and wherever we had ribbon clients, we can now pass more configuration also with load balancer clients. Now, as you can see, I have also switched to a reactive web communication implementation. So we are using web client instead of REST template, and I have done it on purpose. The reason is that right now at this moment, this annotation only works with reactive stack. But do not worry, as we will release Hoxton, it will also work for non-reactive stack. So that's the thing we are doing. And then we have load balanced. Again, this will work same with web client builder as it did with REST template. And ideally, what we would like to have is having new load balancer triggered by it. So right now, what will happen until now is you will have ribbon triggered, both for the reactive stack and the non-reactive stack. And especially with the reactive stack, it's a problem because it will be blocking us. But this is something that the team has already started working on. So we have a new load balancer, Spring Cloud load balancer, and now we have round-robin implementation. This is a reactive implementation. So what we are going to do for Hoxton again is that when you annotate your web client builder with load balanced, that reactive implementation will be used underneath and you will not have to be blocked. Same, we will also make a non-reactive implementation and we will stop using ribbons. So this is a teaser. There's some work to be done on our side. The fun part is you don't need to change practically anything. If you change these annotations to abstraction, so using load balancer client and not ribbon client, you can still use the load balanced annotation and all the work will be done underneath. That's our top priority for the next few months, and we will be releasing this in Hoxton, and we will also be changing all the ribbon transitive dependencies, switching to our own load balancer.
So essentially what we're trying to achieve is the same user experience, so to say,
yeah,
as we have with this discovery client, right? So we just change the jars from one discovery service to another, like from Eureka to Zookeeper, and you don't have to change the code. And we would like to achieve the same thing in terms of load balancing, that it's purely abstracted.
Yeah. So that's the first change. This change will happen mainly underneath. Now, this is another change, and this will require some work on your part. So that will be different. But I still think it's awesome because, as you will see, it's going to be a fun project to work with. At least for me, much more interesting to work with than Zool.
And they pay us for fun, right? So let's do it.
That's what we do. So you will have to change for gateway. And how do you do it? It's very easy. We, of course, fully support the Spring Boot model of making applications. We just need to add this starter, and that's pretty much it. Now, Spring Cloud Gateway is reactive. So we absolutely do not recommend trying to put this starter in your removing Zool dependency from your non-reactive app and just substituting it. No, you should make another service. And then, even though this will be reactive, you will be able to make calls from any service you have. Can be Spring MVC, can be web client. This will be a separate app where you will be making calls. Because if you try to add this reactive starter somewhere where you have non-reactive Spring Boot web starters, it will fail.
Wait a second, you mentioned that it's built on top of Reactor. Yeah. So do I have to know Project Reactor to actually use it?
Not at all, because you are just going to be directing calls to the gateway app, and your other apps can be written differently. It's not important. So we just had the starter, and we have two more starters that I want to show you, which will show soon what they do. So we are adding actuator, and we are adding micrometer registry Prometheus. These are optional. Gateway will work without them. And that's our gateway app. So as you can see, not much magic here. Now, let's see where interesting things start. So, as you remember, in Zool, we could configure some things. Here we can configure much more. I will start with YAML. Do not worry, please do not leave just because you see this YAML config. You will be able to do it differently.
I'm pretty sure they already work with Kubernetes, so they are familiar with YAML.
With YAML development?
Of course.
Okay. Yeah, so as you can see in Gateway, unlike in Zool, so in Zool we had all the routes configured for us implicitly. And on one hand, that was less work to do. But on the other hand, that was quite unsafe from security viewpoint. That was not the best solution because you could easily, again, fail to add these ignored services that Marcin has shown, and you would be redirecting wherever you don't want to redirect. So here it's explicit. Also, if you have any junior developers working with you, they will not be just sitting and looking and thinking, how the heck is it being routed? Like, what is happening? Now, everything will be explicit, and we think it's better this way, so that's why we switched to this mode. So you will have routes, and for every route, you will have to define an ID, and a URI where you want to direct it, and predicates. So predicates will be conditions. Whenever a request matches a certain set of conditions, we will direct it through these filters. So here we want to direct everything that starts with /fraud/-verifier to load balance float verifier. So we can either add a direct HTTP path or HTTPS, but we can also just start with LB, and just only adding this LB scheme, what we'll do is that we will use a load balancer underneath to connect to your service discovery and to resolve this service. And then we are using filters. Filters will allow you to modify your request and your responses. And as you will see, you will be able to do a huge amount of stuff with it that you were not able to do with Zool. So here we just want to strip the prefix, because once we redirect to the fraud verifier app, we don't have all our endpoints starting with fraud verifier, so we just strip one part. Also, just by adding only this much config, we have added a retry filter, so we'll try retrying 3 times if anything fails. And here is our ignore service. So here we used wildcards, and we were directing everything starting with fraud verifier to that service. And here we are only allowing one endpoint. Nothing else will be magically redirected, and you will not have security breach because of that. So that was the conservative way of configuring it. Now let's go with the more modern solution. So now, actually, to have these routes, you don't need to use the YAML config. You can just use Java code config. And the way you do it is you can define a bean of type route locator, and here you will have your routes. And the third part is that we have this Fluent API, so you can easily add stuff. And as you see here, we also have a path predicate, but we are also adding a method predicate, so we will only want things that are with post method, and we can add more of them. So we can add a lot. You can check by URI, you can use time zones. For example, you can use that before, when something happens in this time slot, we want to redirect here, and in another time slot, we want to redirect somewhere else. For example, if we are changing the topology of our architecture, that's very useful. We can use host predicates, we can use after time predicates. There's a lot of options to look at. And there is a part where there is even much more that you can do, which is the filters. So again, you have the Fluent API, and you have the IDE telling you what you can do, and you can do pretty much anything. So for example, you can set status. You can add request headers, you can add parameters, you can add response headers, you can change the request URIs, you can even modify the request body and the response body. So with the requests that are coming to you and with the responses that you are getting, while you are routing them, you can also do whatever you want. You can modify them and yeah, change them the way
everything is happening in a reactive way.
Yeah.
So actually, I don't need to have any knowledge whatsoever about Reactor to use this.
No, you just call the methods, and you will have the ID telling you what you can call. And I have checked it, so now we have more than 20 filters available. And if you think there is something you absolutely need to have and it's not there and it would be useful for everyone, if you make an issue on GitHub, there is a big chance we'll consider it. So yeah, a very elastic way of working with requests when compared to Zool. Now, let's go further. The other thing that we should probably change is histories. So I don't know about you, but for me, if Netflix is not telling to use histories anymore, and if Netflix is recommending using Resilience4j, I guess it's better to do what they're doing and switch to Resilience4j. So let's have a look at this. But of course, we could just tell you, remove the histories dependency, add Resilience4j, set it up, and use it. But then we would be probably out of job, because our job is to provide integrations. So we want to enable...
I don't like it.
Yeah, so let's provide the integration, and that's something the team has done. So we want you to be able just to add a starter. Let's see the starter. Close too many windows. And if we see, this is our starter. And you have to choose the version you want.
Snapshots.
Spring Cloud Starter circuit breakers, and I'm choosing resilience for J, and we have snapshots. The reason is this is in an incubator. So this is an incubator project, but again, as we release Hoxton, this will be released. So this will be a production feature. And let me show you the way it works. So we have done all the config for you, and what you can do is just inject a bean, a circuit breaker factory bean, and then you can use it instead of Hystrix command. So let's see the way we can use it. We are using it here, and previously with the Hystrix command, it would wrap the entire method. If we use the annotation, all the calls would be done within that Hystrix command. But I am not really anticipating having a lot of trouble setting query parameters here or building the URI. So I only want to wrap the actual call that I'm making, which is here. So I run create, and I create a new circuit with an ID, and then we call the method run, where we can pass a lambda with the actual execution that we want to do. So that's the REST template part. Of course, you could also use web client. That would work both ways. And then we pass another lambda of what to do when we have a throwable. So actually what we are passing is the call to this method. If we get an exception, we want to have a fallback. So that's the all good fallback. It's just not in an annotation. It's just written directly programmatically. And this is a very simple way of using it. And actually, let's run some calls. Why not? Let it start doing something. Is it working? Yeah. So in the meantime, let's see the other thing. As you remember, we had this Hystrix dashboard, and it looked pretty nice, you could say. At least for the time when it was made, that seemed like a nice UI. But I don't know about you, the main problem I had with that was, why do I have all my metrics somewhere and all my dashboards somewhere, and then only the Hystrix dashboard using some other tool, something else, not aggregated, like why? So what we think you might do, and change not only your Hystrix dashboard, but also introduce as a pattern, if you are not collecting metrics by now, you should absolutely start doing is to use a metric tool. So the one we recommend for our stack is Micrometer, and then you can use an aggregation tool and a dashboarding tool of choice. So in this presentation, we'll be showing Prometheus and Grafana, but this is optional. Micrometer supports many tools. So let's see it. Let's hope we got some calls at this point. And let's see what's happening. So this is our dashboard. And the fun part here is that you can see the gateway dashboard. And here, for example, you can see requests to given services. And OK, we cannot see it because it's the resolution doesn't show us. But here I'm collecting successful requests to 2 different services via gateway. But in gateway, I haven't added any meters or any explicit metrics code. Only by adding the Prometheus registry and then by adding actuator, we are getting automatically, by default, a lot of metrics about our calls and our routings collected for gateway. And then you can use this data to create all your own dashboards. So I'm not really a dashboarding master. You can create really nice, crazy dashboards, and the data is here. That's what I want to show you, that you don't really need to add any meters to gateway, for example. And here is another one, which is from our Hystrix, what was our Hystrix execution, and now is our new circuit breaker resilience for J execution. So what we have here is we can inject also a meter object, and we can use, So we can inject our meter registry, and then we can create whichever metric objects we need, and then we can use them as we would normally use them, and they're already prepared for us. They're auto-configured for us, so we don't need to do it on our own. And as you see our circuit breaker, going back to this, we can not only use it straight ahead, although that works, we can also customize it. So in order to make it easy for you, we have prepared this option that you can define customizer beans of a given time, types. So as we are working with Resilience4j, that's the Resilience4j circuit breaker factory. And you can configure whatever you could normally configure for Resilience4j. So here, for example, we are just passing some time limiter config changes, and then we are using the defaults. But if you go to this class, it is actually a builder. So it allows you very easily to adjust whatever is there that you could possibly adjust for Resilience4j. So that's the circuit breaker. Let's go back to the presentation. There is one more thing that you absolutely should be changing while going forward, and this is something we will not be showing in the demo because of two reasons. So if you are still using directly, I mean not as transitive dependency, this way a lot of you are using it and you don't probably even know, but if you're using directly Spring Cloud Netflix Archive, it's really high time to switch to Spring Cloud Config Server. And we will not be showing this because, first of all, as we have seen, very little people use it directly. And second, because Spring Cloud Config Server has been with us for many years. There are a lot of presentations about it. There's a lot of docs. But if you're using Archive, it's time to switch. So here we have seen how we could go from the old Netflix-based stack to the new Spring Cloud recommended stack. So we have changed to load balancer client abstractions from ribbon clients. We have stopped using Hystrix and instead using Resilience4j via the Spring Cloud Circuit Breaker project. We have started using Micrometer also for our Hystrix, our Resilience4j commands executions. And we have switched from Zool to Gateway. And we have kept Eureka Service Discovery. That's not in maintenance. For now, there is no reason to switch from it if you are happy with using it. So, should you be making the change? As we announced this with RC1, that was January of this year, and we said that we will keep these projects in maintenance mode and we would continue maintaining them for at least 1 year. So if you have a short-lived app or one that will be decommissioned and will not go further than 1 year, you shouldn't probably change it. That would be a waste of time. In any other case, the time is now, because even though we will still be maintaining it for at least 1 year, you should probably be thinking about the change. So first of all, I would recommend switching to Gateway because that's already production ready, switching to Micrometer, and then when Hoxton gets released, switching to Circuit Breaker and also doing the load balancer changes, so basically switching to abstractions. And as I've said, there are still some changes that we need to do on our part, so you can be sure that we will not stop maintaining those projects until our substitutes are completely ready. But yeah, as Hoxton release train gets released by us, you should probably be making the change. And for Gateway and Micrometer, I would recommend it now, and of course for Config Server. So that's the timeline. Possible issues, as I said, we don't have it already yet, so the transition would have to be gradual, but we will make sure that everything is ready before we completely stop maintaining Spring Cloud Netflix stack. And this project has a demo code. There is, you can check it in GitHub. We will also publish our slides, and we have some time for questions.
Do you have any questions? Yeah, go ahead.
For the gateway, do you still support the Spring Security integration?
So the question was if for the gateway we still support Spring Security integration.
Yes, and there is a sample, if you see our Spring Cloud samples, of setting it up with OAuth 2.
There's a question.
Yep.
Thanks. As I remember, you said you have already 20 filters in the gateway.
Yeah.
And is it possible to add some custom ones, like in Zool?
Yes, yes, you can
Okay.
also implement, and
Thanks.
you can add the custom ones.
Because essentially it's an interface, right, that you have to implement.
Exactly, it's an interface, so you can do it.
I think there was a question there somewhere.
If I'm deploying my application on Kubernetes, does it make sense to use client-side discovery and load balancing while I have already services?
Yes. No, yeah, because I mean, I'm going to answer like a consultant. It depends. Yeah, I mean, of course, Kubernetes gives you the let's say load balancing on its side, right? Because for example, you can hide X number of pods under the same label and just reference it via a single service, and it's gonna, load balance it. You can, however, have custom strategy of load balancing on the client side. It's not mandatory to do it, but you can do it, right? Also, remember that, for example, if you're using Spring Cloud Kubernetes as a library, you still leverage the same abstractions that are there in, let's say, Spring Cloud as such. So we do have load balancer, and you can use Ribbon to, let's say, fetch the instances from Kubernetes, right? So it's like the implementation of how you fetch the data is not like go to Eureka and fetch the instances from Eureka, but fetch it from Kubernetes, right? And then you can apply custom strategies, but it's up to you, right? If you don't have such a need, you don't have to do it.
Thank you.
There's a question.
Will you also be supporting an annotation-based programming model for the circuit breakers?
So the question was if we're going to support the annotation-based model for circuit breaker.
There is an issue, and depending on the scale of interest in the community of having this feature, the decision will be taken. So I guess if everyone wants it, we will probably add it. As of now, we haven't received enough support for this feature to implement it.
So the answer is it depends.
Yes.
Any more questions? Any more questions? So if there are no more questions, if you're shy, you can come to us and we'll answer those questions. And if not, thank you very much.
Thank you.